I'm sure we'll have a unique and brilliant take on that the 50 million people commenting about that all this week won't have had.
Yeah, it'll probably be
so
slightly more insightful than Sean Hannity.
Well, that is guaranteed.
You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Hey everybody, welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. This week we are solely doing an Objectivist report because it's fun. And we already did a podcast last week that I wasn't able to upload on Halloween and kind of decentralization and states' rights and Bill of Rights. How does it apply to the states and so on? We did that last week. We recorded it, but I couldn't get it up. I'm going to get it up this week. That's going to be our episode this week, along with this fresh content, the Objectivist report. I also want to say that I'm under a 2-strike thing at YouTube, and so I couldn't upload for 3 weeks at YouTube. Today, I will finally, or in the next day or two, I will finally be uploading all of those to YouTube, the ones we've done over the last 3 weeks. And I have, in the meantime, started a Rumble. I'm finally on Rumble, Doug.
All right.
So you can find us on Rumble at House of Sunny channel.
By the way, let me just add, we are endeavoring to get it up at the House of Sunny.
What? Is this a sexual joke? I don't have that kind of equipment.
I on behalf of House of Sunny, 50% of House of Sunny is trying to get it up. You do your part, Sunny, to get it up, and I will do my part.
I will be clicking some computer buttons, not of the sexual nature.
Gotcha.
But you go ahead and try your hardest.
Yet another pun. I will try my hardest.
Exactly.
Okay. Well
All
done.
Right. So that will be our show today.
It's time for the House of Sunny Objectivist Report.
In the morning, when you are well rested, you will leave the temple.
When shall I return, Master Khan?
To us, never. Never.
All right, so we've got 2 items to cover. The first is I found an article. It was in my Facebook memories. Came up that 2 years ago, there was an article written by Don Watkins and Yaron Brook regarding Twitter's ban of Donald Trump. So to talk about Doug's and my position, we have always, like literally always, been against the tech companies and their censorship of really any any legal speech. So we're not talking about incitement to violence, and we're not talking about like illegal speech. We're talking about legal speech. As soon as those what should really be neutral platforms started banning people, and people we didn't even like, we're against it. And we've gotten a ton of shit for that. Right?
Have we? I haven't.
Yes.
All my friends agree with me.
I think, well,
you might.
All your friends agree with you. Yes, but in the wider objectivist community, we were really slammed for this position. And our position has always been the reason why it's bad is that it's fraud. It does not follow basic business contract law. It violates 230, which is in itself like a government subsidy sort of to, this is government stepping in and saying, we're going to give special favor to these companies.
Liability shield.
And so I would argue that probably wasn't needed. They should have just let the free market figure it out, but they got the liability shield and then they violated it. So we've always said things like that. And then also tack onto that. Okay, so there are all these legal reasons why they're basically violating basic business law in my opinion.
Their own terms of service. They're defrauding their own customer base. But yeah.
Yes, and they change their customer service. Like you can sign up with a certain customer terms of service, but you don't get grandfathered in. They can change it on a whim and you lose everything you've ever built according to the terms of service that were valid until yesterday because somebody on a whim decided they don't want to do business the same way anymore. No other business operates this way.
Right.
And they claim to be a carrier and not a publisher, and they get all these special favors as a result. So we've always argued for that. But then on top of that, we have said this is totally immoral because it is a violation of the cultural value of free speech. And that is where it begins. And we always will get government censorship after it changes in the culture. So it must be opposed on every possible way. And you can be like we are and be as anti-government involvement as possible in order to have government at all. We're totally limited government people. I don't want regulation of these companies. What I want is actual law applied. And then I want people to say, no, this is messed up. I want America to rise up and say, this is wrong what you're doing. We are going to boycott you or whatever, or just at least speak up. And my free speech buddies over at the Ayn Rand Institute and in objectivist circles, almost all of them have disagreed with that. And they have come out, they are so in fight mode against anyone who might oppose the tech companies. And you never hear them making a moral argument, and you never hear them, let alone the legal argument, but they insist that anyone who opposes these companies for what they're doing is being anti-freedom and anti-business, which I disagree with completely.
And keep in mind that the premise underlying canceling, the disproportionate canceling of conservatives, is that conservatives or libertarians, anyone to the right, I guess, of Karl Marx, is an existential threat, is like a subhuman existential threat to Western civilization if we allow people to speak out. And based on race, whiteness, based on your political ideology or whatever, your religion. This is a direct application of critical race theory.
Yes, it's a Marxist.
It's
a Marxist societal.
It's an attempt.
It's an attempt to spread Marxism.
Not only ideologically, but then it's also an attempt to conflate speech with violence. Remember the professors that have come out and said, if you say something that offends me, you are hurting me, which again, legally establishes, morally and therefore legally will establish the idea and the concept that if I offend you or I say something that disagrees with the leftist sensibilities, then I'm doing violence and I should not only be suppressed and shut down, I should be fired, I should be banned, debanked, and maybe even put in prison if they had their way. So this is the prelude to complete fascism.
I forgot to mention, conceptually. I'll say, so we had 3 objections. One was this violates business contract law, just like common law stuff. Number 2, it's culturally abhorrent. Number 3, though, very clear to me since 2015 that there is fascism going on here. And the reason that I knew that was, first of all, it was often admitted to. There was a Wired article in 2015 with Zuckerberg that basically laid this out. Then there was that Time piece saying how they'd used the social media companies to, and then there were tweets from congressional people in Congress toward the tech companies saying, "What are you doing about this?" Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if they're doing that in public, what are they doing behind the scenes? And then when you see too that the executive boards of these executives and the boards of these companies are revolving doors with high level Obama administration people, I mean, wake up, And then you have the banning of all these conservatives. And then another key to me that it was fascism was when I remember what happened with Alex Jones when Apple. I'm not even going to list
all of them.
When all of them all of them banned him within a day.
24, yeah.
You can't, that's not just, it's a cultural thing. And
They banned the New York Post that went with the story about the Hunter Biden laptop a week before the election.
A week before the election, and everybody knew about that. Okay. And that was across the board. So how is this not collusion with the DNC? I mean, and the Marxists and the cultural Marxists. So that, to me, it's like, you got everything but the smoking gun. And if you're not a stupid OJ juror, you see the fascism, right? You see the fascism. Well, now we have the smoking gun, which is the emails from the DHS to the tech companies, the admission that there's the proof that there was a portal. Zuckerberg says on Joe Rogan, the FBI came to us and told us to block this. The FBI told him to block the Hunter Biden thing. And then the DHS is and the Alex Berenson discovery, where he had the email of some government lackey emailing some Twitter lackey and saying, ban Alex Berenson. Done was the reply. I mean, now there are 50 smoking guns showing that this is in fact a socialist situation, or I'm sorry, a fascist situation. So
let me add something to that too, which is that through Eric Schmidt, the AG of Missouri, and other states' lawsuit that they had filed against big tech, tons of discovery was made available of the emails and the documentation that shows this nexus between the federal government and big tech. The Intercept recently did an article. Lee Fang did an article in the Intercept,
which is, by the way, a leftist magazine.
That's the one that Glenn Greenwald came. But the title of the article is "Leaked Documents Outline DHS's Plans to Police Disinformation," and it's an absolute smoking gun on the DHS. Remember the DHS who tried to create a disinformation governance board with that crazy woman who was like had that Mary Poppins viral tweet and everything,
like Broadway ambitions
that they quickly backpedaled from.
If we lived in a like a real communist situation, she would be like, they would give her a Broadway job.
Yeah. Oh, no,
she would be who you would have to watch on Broadway.
But just, I mean, it's out there now. Look at the Intercepts article, the emails, and all the evidence of this portal that was in place that government agents could access to directly object and censor or block certain types of people. I mean, and we knew
to block people as well as subject matter.
Yeah, we don't want anyone talking about this. It's a threat to national security.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so obviously hindsight is 2020, but what I'm trying to say is 2 years ago, this was obvious if you were willing to see it. And 5 years ago, this was obvious if you were willing to see it. Maybe less so, but I think that there are many podcasts that we've done where we've made this case and laid it out, and you can go to my channel, House of Sunny, and put in a search for, tech or something, and you will get those episodes. I think we've done 3, 4, 5 episodes where we've talked about this.
No, I've been covering it for years.
So
and I've been blogging about it. I mean, it's obvious.
Been saying for years. So, okay, in this context, I want to read this incredible article that came out 2 years ago, and it just shows, first of all, bad reasoning, but also literal cognitive dissonance bias in the face of everything that we just laid out. This is what the objectivist leadership was saying about the tech companies. And then they wonder why Ayn Rand is not spreading in the culture. It's so pathetic. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm just going to share my screen for a minute and show you this article, but then I'll go back so you can see our faces while I read it. It's not very long. So this is on Don Watkins' Medium. It's called Don's Writing. It's on medium.com. But he says it's written by him and Yaron Brook. Yaron Brook is the chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute. Don Watkins used to work at the Ayn Rand Institute, left for a while, and I think he's back working for the Institute. I can't remember for how long, but he does a lot of writing with Yaron Brook. We know Yaron Brook never writes. So I don't know what their collaboration is exactly, if they just have a conversation and then Don whips this out. But anyway, I'm going to take it to mean that they both agree with this. Okay. I'll stop the share and I'm just going to read it. And then and then we can comment and you can see our faces better. Okay. Twitter's ban on Donald Trump has been met with charges of censorship. But this is right after Donald Trump was banned on Twitter.
The president of the United States.
President of the United States.
On a neutral platform.
President of the United States on a supposedly neutral platform. In January, Twitter's ban on Donald Trump has been met with charges of censorship. Couldn't be censorship. But the real threat to free speech isn't Twitter, isn't fascist Twitter. It's the people calling for government control of Twitter, like the five people calling for government control of Twitter, not fascist Twitter. And by the way, the people who are charging Twitter with censoring Donald Trump are not like across the board people who are calling for regulation of Twitter as the proper response to this. They are A, morally condemning it. B, maybe they have a freedom solution like we do. And there are people who are calling for regulation. And part of I think our job, your job, Don Watkins and Yaron Brook, as supposed freedom intellectuals, is to help those people who they see something in reality that is bad, and their response is, oh, let's do something. And you think that that's the wrong response. Your job is to reach out to those people and say, you know what, you're right, but here's a solution. You don't have to go to government regulation. Here's another solution. Yeah. But instead, we're going to lump everyone who thinks that Twitter has censored Donald Trump. And by the way, you can't have censorship unless it's government action, is wrong. The broader term there is just that they have banned it. I mean, what words do you want them to use? They took it down. They're taking down conservative or Republican or non-Marxist people and commentary. That's what they're taking down. What do you want to call that? If not, if you want a different word for it, because you want censorship to be just a narrowly defined type of censorship or type of banning, then come up with a new freaking word. But stop arguing semantics with people. Stop insulting our intelligence. Oh, I owned you because I said the word you're using is wrong. Could you be a bigger freaking geek?
Exactly.
All right. So that's the first fucking sentence, and I'm already angry.
Yeah, they take a narrow, like you said, they take a narrow definition of what censorship is, and then they box everyone into these nice little.
Then they make it binary. Either you're for total, Twitter doing whatever the hell it wants, even if it wants to be fascist, or you are for government censorship and you're a statist too.
Yeah, no nuance whatsoever. Not like, hey, morally, this is a real problem and this is the left trying to suppress conservatives and they're violating their own terms. Maybe a private lawsuit would make sense here.
Yeah.
Or a boycott. Maybe there's a freedom solution.
Or repealing special treatment like 230. Yeah,
okay. Or look into why and how the government can threaten big tech. Like, what are the mechanisms that the government is utilizing to threaten these guys in the first place? And let's take those away. But let's have that nuanced discussion. But
I mean, it takes a lot more information.
We go right to the straw man argument.
You know what I got to say? Maybe part of the problem is these two guys are so lazy that they don't bother to look into. But I don't think that's just it. I think deep down, they are like oddly psychologically pro tech company. They don't see the Orrin Boyles. They don't see the James Taggarts, or they're like the left. They hate Trump. They don't like Alex Jones. They like free speech for me, but not for thee, because I don't like these people.
This comes off as a post hoc rationalization for what they want to believe, which is they don't like Trump and they kind of like the Twitter companies. They're sympathetic to the left on it. So let's come up with something that that justifies our feelings and instead of like breaking this down and really helping people to like understand like the nuance of it the way we're describing it. It's just they box everyone into these binary two pigeonholes and you're either there
Well,
or you're
and
there.
worse
That's
than
it.
that, they box you in. The people who want total wild, wild west for Twitter, which includes fascism, because that's what we now know is happening. And that's what you and I saw coming a million miles away, especially 2 years ago. This was written 4 months after the election, when we saw in real time the banning of the New York Post before the election.
Yeah.
Okay. 4 months later, they're writing this and they act like there's no evidence at all that Twitter is fascist and therefore anything they do is right. But the people who want to regulate them are the only statists in this equation. Come on, guys. So because of their bias, they're either not looking for this information. They're not looking to connect the dots. They're not looking for the nuance. They're not, looking at opposite opinions, or they're just rationalizing their way out of those because they never seem to address what you and I or other people are saying about this.
Like, have they even bothered to look at some of the legal briefs of like Prager's lawsuit
I doubt
against
it.
Big Tech?
Which you have read, by the way. You have read these.
Like, dig into this stuff.
I know. It's really complicated. My God. Okay.
It's not easy.
Okay. Next sentence.
Sentence 2. We got to move this along.
This could be a 2-hour objectivist report. Okay. Censorship means the forcible prohibition of speech. Blah, blah, blah. You got the word wrong, guys. Something only government can do. So what is it when a private company does it? What's the word you want us to use, Don and Yaron? And then I'll use that word.
What if the government threatens a company and then the company does it under threat of the government, which is actually what was happening?
I think that's obvious censorship. I hope to them, but I'm even talking like when we're arguing the cultural issue. What's the word I'm allowed to use? Just give it to me, you guys. You can't give me no word. There's a word. What's the word? Banned? What's the word? Okay. Freedom of speech guarantees that no one will silence you. Oh, wait.
Huh?
What? Freedom of speech guarantees that no one will silence you. It doesn't guarantee you a platform any more than free trade guarantees you customers. Finding a platform and an audience for your speech is a demanding challenge, which social media companies have made infinitely easier. They like to use this argument that, well, if you're a private company, you do have a right to say, I don't want these people in my business. And I agree with that but that doesn't mean you can fraud them. That doesn't mean you can renege on the contract that you made with them. It doesn't mean that you can act on behest of the government. It doesn't mean that you can,
well, yeah. Think about the difference between a publishing business and a neutral carrier, like a phone company or a utility or something like that. Not that Twitter's a utility, but when you have adopted a liability shield based on your status as a neutral platform, and people cannot sue you like they could a publisher like the New York Times or something, like, say, yeah, go away. I don't want your article in my newspaper. Right. But this is a totally different situation. This is not. This is their rationalism.
Yes, they're equating things that don't match. They're taking something true, which is private companies should be able to, and they're applying it where it doesn't apply. Okay. But now, instead of showing gratitude to Twitter for giving them a platform for free, many users, including political leaders, are using Twitter to call for Twitter's destruction. Okay, I'm thankful that Twitter is being a communist shill for the fascist overlords. Fuck you, Don and Yaron. I mean, oh my God, it reminds me of that piece where I think Ben Bayer wrote it and we covered it, where he was just like, patients should be deferential and on their fucking knees in front of doctors giving them advice instead of where's your gratitude for these doctors who are telling you to inject yourself with poison? Oh, I don't know. I don't really have gratitude for Marxists and fascists. Okay. One line of attack comes from people like Lindsey Graham. Oh, and he's on our side. Do you think Lindsey Graham is on our side, Doug?
No.
Okay, thank you. Who want to strip social media companies of Section 230 protection. Sounds right. But it's not Section 230 that gives Twitter the right to decide what content it hosts. It's the First Amendment.
Okay.
Instead, Section 230 protects the ability of websites to police content on their sites without being legally liable for all content. Police by meaning what legal speech versus illegal speech. This law was vital to the growth of the internet. No, it fucking wasn't. Why are you saying that? You're supposed to be a free market person. You want freedom for Twitter to do anything it wants, but you don't want but you want the government to step in to provide this favor for these companies to protect them from liability. All they had to do was claim we're neutral. We're like the phone company. And their liability shield is there. That's a valid argument if that's in fact how they were operating. Anyway, 230 is fine if they comply with it. Where it is impossible for a platform to review all user content. Abolishing 230 wouldn't promote the free exchange of ideas on the web. It would end social media. Okay, then they should comply with it.
Right. And you could argue what Section 230 means and whether it's applicable here. I've heard legal arguments that would counter my position. I'm fine. Let's have that argument. But that's exactly what we should be looking at here and debating is, should there even be this liability shield? Should there be an FCC and a Section 230 that conferred this? It did confer value on these companies by shielding them from liability and allowing them to grow and as neutral platforms. All these content providers came into these neutral platforms and brought their audience and their eyeballs into these platforms and conferred billions and billions of dollars on these people. And once they got rich,
companies with this special thing, they killed blogging, right? Remember
much.
Before this stuff,
Mhm.
the free speech was happening on blogs and everybody had these like RSS feeds where they were like going to their favorite blogs and keeping track of their favorite commenters that way.
Yeah.
Then Facebook and Twitter and all that came in and they basically destroyed all of those sites and the revenue, that the way that they were making money, the writers and all that stuff. So then they brought all their stuff onto Facebook and that's where they started making their money and everything. And that's when Facebook got the power to destroy them on a whim. And they better have a damn good reason to doing that or something's really wrong.
Or if Twitter came out tomorrow and said, we don't want conservatives on our platform. We're a free company, we're a private company, and we don't want conservatives. Okay, but you're not a neutral platform. You're a publisher and an editor now. You are determining an ideological standard for who can come on your platform. That puts you in like a different.
And you're changing the terms of service with the people who've already joined up.
Right.
And they went to Congress and said, they lied and said, we're not censoring conservatives. Okay. Or banning or whatever word Don Watkins and Garen Brooke would like me to use. All right. Other opponents of Twitter prefer a more direct approach to destruction, outright nationalization. And then he has a tweet of, can you see that? I guess not.
No, I can't because
It has a tweet of Will Chamberlain. And Will Chamberlain, by the way, he's a conservative that's really on the spectrum. He's on the...
He died, I think, didn't he?
No, I don't think so.
The famous Will Chamberlain?
Will Chamberlain. He's
he's
a conservative commentary person. He's like, I don't know I think he's at Prager. I don't know where he's at, but he is very much on the side of conservatives that is pro big government. He's kind of a big government moralist. Okay. He's willing, he's very religious and he wants government to control more of these moral issues, cultural issues.
Bad. Okay.
And so he's on the extreme. So far we've got Lindsey Graham and then we've got Will Chamberlain. And I don't mean to use the word extreme. What I mean is he is not part of the group of people complaining about Twitter and social media and offering the kinds of solutions that you and I have talked to. He is nowhere near us politically. So he is going for like the worst he can find. He's cherry picking the worst he can find. And then the tweet
to
is
avoid any nuance.
Yeah. The tweet is, the next GOP platform will include a plank to nationalize Twitter and Facebook. Not obvious at all why they should remain private companies unconstrained by the First Amendment. So that is a statist solution to what we are seeing as an obvious wrong, an obvious injustice. That is his solution, and it's statist. And I don't agree with it. And I don't think most people agree with it.
So then you must agree with Don Watkins and your umbrella. You must be in the other camp then. Sonny.
Right.
If you disagree with them.
I'm for a free-for-all and everything wrong and fascism and violation of contract and all that other stuff. Okay.
So now they're pointing out they're now pointing out a statist solution, but they're not, of course, analyzing the root statist.
They don't even agree that there's a problem. The fact that the government
is threatening Twitter.
They don't even accept that there's a problem.
Right.
They don't even accept that there's a problem. So they become completely unable to offer a solution to people like Will Chamberlain. Hey, dude, you don't need, and they should object to this. And they should say, this is not necessary. You can use the free market to solve this problem. And it is a problem. It is a problem. Okay. The fact that Twitter's critics, because they're not Twitter critics, they're Twitter, what do you call it? Fanboys. The fact that Twitter's critics are calling for Twitter's destruction on Twitter is a grotesque act of injustice. If you believe that Twitter is, as commentator
How
Dave
dare
Rubin
you complain
tweeted,
about your platform?
if you believe that Twitter is, as commentator Dave Rubin tweeted, evil and should be subject to government control. So Dave Rubin said it was evil. He didn't say it should be subject to government control, or maybe he did, but they don't quote him. They only quote the word evil. So they're accusing sort of tangentially Dave Rubin of saying that they should be controlled by the government.
There's no quote.
But they don't quote that. That's not from Dave Rubin. That's from them. Then you have a moral obligation to cancel your account and take your speech elsewhere. Or you can actually stay in the bread line and get bread when you live in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's the analogy. If you have government coercion, if you have statism happening, if you have a moral injustice happening to you, why should you cede ground and walk away? And why shouldn't you be on Twitter and use whatever they have to try to fix the situation?
Right. If you go to a restaurant and they serve you like a sandwich that has glass in it or something like that, is it injustice for you to complain and try and change it and try and call the manager over and say, hey, man,
you should just quietly walk out the door and take your business elsewhere.
Okay. Gotcha.
Using Twitter to destroy Twitter is no different from the hypocrites who organize anti-capitalist protests on their iPhones, something Rubin has no doubt mocked. They're so contemptuous. Twitter must stop tolerating this injustice. It should have the self-esteem to insist that a precondition for using its service is respecting freedom, like they're respecting. Twitter should ban anyone who advocates using government coercion against them. Would such a move hand ammunition to its critics? Oh, I got cut off here. Sorry. Would such a move hand ammunition to its critics? On the contrary, it is the weakness with which tech companies have defended themselves thus far that has emboldened authoritarians like Ted Cruz and Elizabeth Warren. The thugs in suits out to destroy Silicon Valley can't be placated. They have to be opposed in the only manner they can be opposed, on moral grounds. It's moral intransigence that Twitter's enemies fear, the moral intransigence of companies who insist that they have a right to exist and run their platforms as they see fit.
Wrong. They don't have the right to run it arbitrarily. They have the obligation to respect their own terms of service and the contracts that they effectively have signed with billions of people, which includes the legal context as well. So they can't do whatever they want. It would actually be illegal for them, I believe, even under current law, to ban people who call for the government regulation of Twitter. Again, it is a neutral platform. You can't just willy-nilly start canceling people off your platform for political ideology. You can't do that.
All of this is against common law and common business practice. All of it. Twitter's enemy. Okay. Sadly, Twitter and other social media, not to mention, this whole thing are a bunch of Marxists out of control in the culture. We're barreling toward authoritarianism and destruction in this country, and they can't wait to come out with an article defending the communists, saying nothing about the people wronged, just morally wronged by being removed of their company and their everything they've built and created. And what about that businessman? What about the small businessman who has built a following on Twitter? What about that small businessman? No, big tech is the people that they love. Okay. Sadly, Twitter and other social media companies have undermined their ability to take a moral stand with their inconsistency. They ban Trump, but not Chinese or Iranian tyrants. They quickly remove calls for violence by right-wing provocateurs, but all too often tolerate similar calls from the left. They want the benefits of freedom and capitalism while funding anti-capitalist zealots like Ibrahim X. Kendi. The inconsistency is shameful and self-destructive. To take a moral stand requires practicing what you preach. If social media positions itself, yes, exactly, Don, and your own. If social media positions itself as politically neutral, then it should live up to that promise. You think?
They just told us that none of that shit matters.
That's right.
They can do whatever they want. They're a private
just
company.
Told us that doesn't matter. No amount of inconsistency, however, justifies political control of social media. Okay, I can agree with that, but that's not what you're doing here. You're not admitting that there's a problem and looking for a free market solution. You're just slamming down anybody who's saying there's a problem here. And you're lumping us all into a group of statism. We don't lose our political rights by exercising them irrationally, nor does the incredible success of social media at providing a platform for billions make it a public utility. There is a town square issue here. I don't understand the legalities of that, but there is a town square issue here. Such a policy would mean giving government a monopoly over internet speech. No, that's what we don't want. And that is what has happened. When you see Alex Jones go down in 24 hours across the board and all the debanking that's gone on, wake up.
Yeah.
Do conservatives really want Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and AOC in charge of Twitter? No.
They are in charge of Twitter. That's what we're complaining about.
That's what the problem is.
They are literally in control of it before Elon Musk.
No issue is more important than free speech. Oh my God. But you're not willing to morally defend it? It is the right that protects all of our other rights. Yes. And 2A. Today, woke mobs want to silence politically incorrect speech, and their opponents want to force social media to promote their own speech. No, Don, and your own. It isn't just that binary. Neither side values the free human mind. Well, neither do you. Where's your free human mind solution for what we're seeing? You don't have one. And you barely admit that there's a problem. Companies like Twitter have the opportunity to turn the tide on these would-be censors. All they need are the right, something, and courage to defend them. Okay, so that's... They're trying to give courage. They're saying this is their conclusion.
Twitter should have the moral courage to ban people.
Yes. That is the conclusion of this article. Companies like Twitter have the opportunity to turn the tide on these censors. They're not censors. This little fringe group on the conservative side, they're the censors.
Yeah.
And we want to write an article making sure that we give moral aid and comfort to the censors against the censors. Good for you, Don. Good for you, Don, on your own.
Golf clap.
Oh, the golf clap. Okay, so any last word on that before we go to the next one?
We could just talk about it for hours. It's so infuriating.
I just love that they did this 2 years ago, and now what's come out is a smoking gun that shows that they're freaking idiots. I'm sorry, but okay, I don't want to say they're idiots. They're cognitively disonanced. whatever,
Disonanced.
I think Jeroen's an idiot. I don't think Don's an idiot. I want him to get on board on my side. I really want Don on my side. I'm disappointed that 2 years ago he couldn't see this. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
No, I think the problem is they're just steeped in rationalism, and they're just psychologically or epistemologically
I don't agree with that on
incapable.
Jeroen. I think Jeroen is actually malicious, but
Yeah,
Don,
okay.
yes, Don
Yeah,
rationalism.
fine, whatever drives it. But the problem is that they have this like instead of like looking at this issue within the context, like if you go to a baker and you say, like the baking of the lesbian cake thing or something, and the baker says, no, I don't want to do that. Okay, that's one situation. When you're in a totally different legal context with respect to like the neutral platform, like if the government said, or if AT&T said, hey, small businessman, we don't like you politically, we're going to cut off your phone service or something like that. These are like totally different situations. And so you can't just like broadly have this like rationalistic formula that you're applying to the situation. And then they internally contradict themselves, because they first say they can do whatever they want. It's a private company, irrespective of these contextual issues that I just cited. And then at the end they say, but they shouldn't do that. They should be neutral. And, like, this is so useless. This is an absolutely like useless argument.
Not useless. It's providing aid and comfort and moral cheerleading to the big tech people who are doing all the nasty stuff.
It's useful to communists.
Yes. That's the only people it's useful to. Ugh. All right. So the next fun Objectivist report is Harry Binswanger. Harry Binswanger, we covered in, I think it's podcast number 128. We did an Objectivist report where Harry did an article about like that you're stupid if you don't take the. I mean, it was unbelievably irrational and laughable. And here is this was recorded a month ago. So that was I don't know, that was like February. I think it was No, it was June or something that he did that, which isn't that long ago. Gosh, is it really that? Okay. But this one, he just did this video. See if you think, with today's context and today's knowledge, if you think this guy isn't like the same thing, like, are they only reading the New York Times, these people?
Don't insult the New York Times.
Oh, sorry. The Communist Times. I give them their proper name. Don't want them to feel bad. Want them to know that I see them. I see them. Okay. Here's Harry Binswanger on the vaccines.
They have to be satisfied. It's not enough that you're satisfied, or you say, well, it may not be that effective, but let me try it. It was pretty damn easy to determine it was safe.
Hang on a second. I want to go back. So the context is he's talking about the FDA. I don't agree with FDA involvement, and I want to destroy the FDA. So that's my position on that. But he's talking about approval of the vaccines and regulation of them. And he's saying, so, maybe it's not that effective, but maybe I want to try it. And by the way, his article earlier that we took apart talked about how effective it was, I think, if I remember.
So correctly. By the way, he just said, did he just say, like, could go back like 3 seconds? I think he just said,
let me try it.
It's easy.
It was pretty damn easy to determine it was safe.
What?
To the anti-vax people.
Yes, this is the part that I'm playing. It's just literally 2 seconds here.
Sorry.
Let me try it. It was pretty damn easy to determine it was safe, contrary to the anti-vax people.
It was easy to determine it was safe, contrary to the anti-vax people. So if you want to look into whether it was safe, you are an anti-vaxxer, which is a slur. Because it was so easy for him to figure out it was safe. Okay, now we got to keep listening.
Completely innocuous and is out of your people. Pretty damn easy to determine it was safe, contrary to the anti-vax people. It's completely innocuous.
It's completely innocuous.
And is out of your body. The original vaccine, as I understand, as I've read from people that I think are informed, it is a matter of days, couple of days. So this idea of, well, maybe it has long-term consequences.
First of all, he's wrong. It's not out of your body in a couple of days. They've proven that it does leave the site. They said it didn't leave the site. It does leave the site. It gets all over your body. They have proven this.
It can. It certainly can.
It doesn't always.
Absolutely.
But it can.
What he just says, demonstrably false. I'm still on the first sentence where he said it's easy to determine it's safe. It's easy to do pharmacological research suddenly. You just determine it's safe. How? How is it easy to determine it's safe? You just know? And then if you even question or try to determine whether something's
you're an
safe,
anti-vaxxer.
you're an anti-vaxxer.
Which means irrational. You're not being rational about it or scientific or logical about it.
You know how hard it is to do clinical trials of medicine and the complexity of going from like an in vitro drug or some targets you have to actually like putting that in the population, and why it's so difficult to get a final drug approved because human beings and the body, are so different. I mean, it's just absolutely
the line
insane.
That kills me is it's completely innocuous. Are you watching people drop dead? Are you watching the excess statistics coming out of Europe?
Apparently
I don't even know
not.
what to say. He's like, I've been reading people who are apparently informed. It's like, obviously, Harry, you're not. You are reading people who are pushing propaganda up your ass.
I just read a journal article that proved that like is statistically significantly present, in men under 40. And many countries are now banning or advising against the for kids under 18. I mean, we could go on and on and on. There's just
they
Google
also
it.
Just came out with a study that they've now proven it's not COVID because they've taken, I think it's a study out of, gosh, is it Israel? They've taken unvaccinated people and there's no increase in this for people who are vaccinated who got COVID. So it's only shown in the populations who got. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I've seen some of those studies, but the point is that they're still doing studies.
Right.
So we don't even know.
We don't even know all the damage. And in terms of sterilization that they're talking about, because it's obviously affecting, especially for women, it's obviously affecting their reproductive organs because women's periods have gone completely haywire. So I mean,
we don't know. No one knows.
We don't know what's going to happen. This is going to go on for years.
And you can't do a long-term study because there hasn't been a long-term yet. Right. And yes, long-term effects are real.
So therefore,
ask anyone who's taken the medication.
Possibly say the words innocuous or it's easy to determine it's safe. No, you're taking a risk. 2 years ago when this came out, you're taking a risk because it hasn't been around very long.
No, it doesn't. So anyway, the FDA
you just said it doesn't have long-term effects.
Did he just say that?
Yeah, go back a few seconds.
Maybe has long-term consequences. No, it doesn't. So anyway,
how does he know that?
The FDA.
I don't know.
This thing's been out for a year and a half.
How does he know that? How
no,
can
it doesn't.
Just say that. That's why, I became really skeptical of this because they kept saying the same 3 words, or if I'm Joe Biden, 2 words, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. In December, what was it? 2020? Was it 2020? December 2020.
If you said this is an experimental drug, we don't know the long-term effects. We haven't done enough studies. There's some clinical trials that show in this population based on these criteria that it was safe, blah, blah, blah. But other people, we don't really know. We're still tracking this or that or the other thing. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't, we just tell us what you know and you don't know. That's not what they said. They said safe and effective, which is the absolute indication that it's a lie because you don't know that. No one knows that.
That's what it was to me.
It's a risk reward.
It totally raised my red flags because I'm like, you can't know this. And everyone who said this, like Amesha Jala, whom Harry loves and follows, and that's who he's reading for information on all the whole pandemic. They know better. they know better that it's not necessarily safe and effective. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. When they were saying that in December 2020, they didn't know. And
you know what?
And
It's
so
hard.
people who said that, I said, you're full of shit. You're full of shit. For whatever your reason is, you're full of shit. So, but now he's saying this in October 2022 that it's innocuous, that it's easy to see that it's safe, that there are no long-term consequences. Has he seen VAERS? Has he seen any of this data? Has he noticed that all these young people are dry? Oh my God.
Or that life insurance payouts have gone up, or that funerals skyrocketed, like profitability of funeral homes skyrocketed. I mean, you could just go on and on and on. And the thing is,
are you giving us
like,
a stock tip, Doug? Is this buy funeral stocks?
Yes, that's stock advice. Buy funeral homes, and don't buy short life insurance companies. Seriously, man.
Oh my God. What has happened to these? This is the supposed purveyors of logic and reason and objective analysis.
No. So someone asked me recently, like, have I changed or did they change? And
I ask myself that every day.
No, I don't think they've changed. I think the issues that their deficiencies and their epistemological flaws, I think, have become more obvious with issues like this. And as I've gotten probably more intelligent myself, I think maybe as a kid, it was easier, especially when the issues were broader, because I think when we were younger, it was more like Marxism versus capitalism.
Yeah,
okay,
right.
Great.
But and those things, they could easily tap into Rand's writings for those things. There weren't a lot of things going on that they had to actually apply themselves.
Right. And the more you get into a very concrete issue like this that requires real serious reasoning and analysis, where I've been knee deep in the COVID thing. I'm in a group of doctors in our area. I talk to doctors all the time about this stuff. I know cardiologists, pathologists, family physicians, and so on. So I'm like talking to people who are like in the field on a lot of this stuff, and it's very complicated science. And to say something as idiotic as he just said is beyond the pale. I mean, it's irrational. It's purely irrational. It's like there's no basis for it.
Totally irrational. It's like it's literally like metaphysically, I'm getting a thing from God. There's no basis for anything he just said.
Like you could say, cite a study. Like, here's what I've seen, and here are the studies that I'm relying on. And based on that, I think the risk reward is this.
He said, I've read people, but his conclusion is it's easy to determine it's safe and it's innocuous. And is he in a cave? Is he in a cave to think that? That means he's lazy. If he really that means he's reading New York Times and a Meshajala and the whole leftist spin on this whole thing. And
I don't even think the left would say it's easy to determine it's safe. Like, is there anyone even on the
left is saying
Pfizer wouldn't say that.
The left is saying we want amnesty. That's what the left is saying.
No, not us. We never said that.
We couldn't have known. So you're gonna have to forgive us. Haha.
Sorry about all that.
Sorry we your teenage son.
And I'm just more curious about, I think the more instructive thing here is not just the particular issue, which, you could litigate forever, but it's just the approach.
Yeah.
Again, it's this like super rationalism. Like, it's easy to determine a drug is safe, just completely evading anyone who's ever been in science and who's actually done research, particularly in medical research. Or pharmacological research, and understands how difficult it is, not just to get a drug approved through the FDA, which is hard, and he's right, there are probably unreasonable criteria put forth by the FDA, no doubt about it. But in actuality, like actually validating, like what does it mean to validate a drug? right? There's no point at which you get to where you say, this is 100% safe. Like any medicine that you put in your body has a risk and a reward. And it's also a function of your own body and your own comorbidities and your own factors. So anytime you're going to take a medication, it involves, all right, what are the benefits and what are the risks if I don't take it? And what are the risks if I do take it? And so you have to weigh those things. And usually you would weigh those based on the best information you have, based on the largest studies you can find that were done, and also understanding your own particulars about your own health and your own condition. And usually, hopefully, your doctor could help consult you in that regard. But to have like a blanket false generalization that it's easy to determine this and there are no long-term effects, and this is a completely innocuous
You can't even say that about an aspirin,
Right.
I think maybe the vaccine has given him dementia.
Yeah, right. Like, no,
that would be the
I just
best
think
thing I could say about him. As far as objectivism and what has happened, I agree with you. I hadn't thought about that, but the issues are less broad. And as we get a distance from Ayn Rand's actual takes on things, the issues are just, the context is so much different too, the further we get away from it. And I also think that Leonard Peikoff, who was sort of the intellectual head of the movement, was a better thinker and did a better job applying objectivism to modern events. He retired. And since then, I feel like I don't agree. Ever since he retired, there's like this pre-Peikoff and post-Peikoff for me, where post-Peikoff, I don't agree with anything the Ayn Rand Institute is saying.
Yeah.
I don't agree with anything that the Ayn Rand Institute and their leadership. I can't think of a single thing that they're saying these days about modern culture and events that I agree with anymore. Prior to Leonard Peikoff retiring, I would say I was probably 85, 90% in agreement.
And let's also keep in mind that some topics really require specialist knowledge. I don't pretend to be an expert on COVID. Like, I'm an expert in data science and I can do some research and I talk to people that are experts.
Since you're not an expert, why don't you just read a Meshajala? Like, what tells you that a Meshajala, like the reason I don't is because he said it's safe and effective. Because before this whole thing, he was pro mandates in California when they were passing that shit. And for kids. And that takes away medical freedom. And so he's not a freedom in medicine guy. And he's not a rational thinker because he immediately said it was safe and effective. So right away, I know this guy's wrong.
There's
and
something
suspect.
wrong with this approach. Yeah.
I didn't go to him for any of my COVID tracking and advice. I found doctors I could tell were weighing everything that was being said. They were presenting a case as rationally and objectively as they could. They were incorporating new data. When they were wrong, they came out and said they were wrong,
Right. Right. Those are all the hallmarks of someone who's actually a scientist. Someone who says, I don't know about that. I'm not sure yet. We have to do more studies. This is what we know. And here's the source. And here's the study that leads me to believe this, or I'm inclined to believe this. And
Harry doesn't see that. He's taking a mesh as his guru.
Yes.
I rejected him immediately. So why is Harry accepting that guy?
Because that's rationalism. You have like a guru.
Yeah.
And the guru.
But you don't bother to check your guru before you accept him as your guru?
No, apparently that's the new standard at the Ayn Rand Institute. And I think this pervades a lot of, the objectivist movement too, is the guru mentality. Not understanding that, certain situations are very complicated. You have to dig in. There's a lot of specialist knowledge and stuff. You can't be an expert on everything. So yes, he's making an effort there to like cite someone, but who is he citing? Like, what is he actually? And the conclusion that he reached is so preposterous and so stupid, even to people in the field that support it.
Even to the writer at The Atlantic begging for amnesty. She knows.
Yeah. Would anyone say what he just said? No, it's just ludicrous. And anyone who thinks that way, that thinks like, oh, I'm a philosopher, and therefore I'm just going to opine that it's easy to determine that a drug is safe. No, it's not.
And this is an innocuous drug, totally innocuous. Come on. There isn't that is a total oxymoron.
It's
right
arbitrary. It's arbitrary.
There is no such thing as an innocuous drug, period. Like you can't say that universally for every body, Anyway.
Right.
Okay. So that's our Objectivist report for today. Join us next week. We'll talk about the elections. I think we'll talk about the results today. I don't know what they're going to be, and I don't want to speculate, but we'll be here next week to discuss what it all means. Right, Doug? I'm sure we'll have a unique and brilliant take on that the 50 million people commenting about that all this week won't have had.
Yeah, it'll probably be
so
slightly more insightful than Sean Hannity.
Well, that is guaranteed. All right, everybody, see you next week.
It's been the demise of bad ideas, and we'll know what's right when she's done. So download this free podcast now and give perspectives you may lack. It's concise and right and achieves world peace, guaranteed all your money back. Last time, ready?